The whole idea behind UFO and space travel is that aliens have perfected the ability to move from one end of the galaxy to the other. But is there sci-fi technology capable of breaking through the friend zone? And then we meet a young woman who's at a crossroads in her life. Recently divorced, and her first dating experience after that ended tragically. So she's looking for love, looking for something to help mend her broken heart. But when she meets a mysterious man in a grocery store, she has no idea she's about to come face to face with the darkest of all magic. Today on Dead Rabbit Radio. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dead Rabbit Radio. I'm your host, Jason Carpenter. I'm having a great day. I hope you guys are having a great day too. I hope you guys are having tons of fun doing whatever you're doing. Now, if you look at the title of this episode, just to let you know that this episode may be cursed. I don't do many of these episodes. I think this is only the fourth one that I've labeled as cursed. I don't ever want to overly do cursed episodes. I don't want it to become a meme or a LARP. But it is possible that the second story I'm going to tell you on this episode may curse you. Very, very interesting story. You're like, it might be the most fantastic story ever, Jason. I don't want to get cursed. I don't want to hear it. We'll talk a little bit about that as that episode approaches. But first off, running into Dead Rabbit Radio Command, everyone get on your feet and give it up for Dasha loses weight. Woohoo, yeah, wee! Yeah! Running on into Dead Rabbit Radio Command, Dasha loses weight. Donated money during our Thanksgiving live stream. Really, really appreciated that. Dasha, you're going to be our captain, our pilot of this episode. If you guys can't support the show financially, I totally understand. I really do. Just help spread the word about Dead Rabbit Radio. That helps out so much. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone you know. Dead Rabbit Radio is your favorite paranormal show. Really appreciate that. Dasha, let's go ahead and start this episode out. I'm going to go ahead and toss you the keys to the Dead Rabbit Dune buggy. We're leaving behind Dead Rabbit Radio Command. Drive us all the way out to Russia. And to answer the question, I know this week's been pretty crazy with half episodes and Frankenstein episodes and all that stuff. I'm kind of losing track of time. I saw Dune 2. I saw Dune Part 2. I know all you guys have been waited with bated breath. The man who famously loves Transformers 3. He thinks that's the best. What could he possibly have thought of Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 2? It was okay. It was okay. I talked about it for 2 weeks. I was all hyped. I'm all, Dune. I thought the first one was better. I watched the first one on my laptop with my headphones on, and I really liked Dune Part 1. I thought it was really good. It was action-packed, had a lot of soul. Really liked that young guy, Timothy Chalamet. He's a good actor. Special effects were on point, action was on point, acting was on point. Second one, I don't want to say I was disappointed. I will say it was no Transformers 3. Dune Part 2, I did not think was as cool or as good as Transformers Part 3, if I gotta be honest. Transformers 3, Dark of the Moon, was a better film. I can already hear you guys loading shotguns. You're like, we're not even going to leave comments this time. We're just going to show up and shoot them in the head. Wasn't a huge fan of Dune Part 2. It was okay. Maybe I was hyped too much. Maybe I was really, really hyped for it. It just wasn't that good. It just wasn't that good, guys. I'm sorry. Visually, there is some cool stuff in it. Story-wise, there was some cool stuff in it. I don't really want to go into spoilers because the movie's so new. But I think what happens is, when you watch a movie like Transformers 3, and you see a snake eat a building while people are still in it, And then the building starts to fall, and now people are sliding out of the building, and Optimus Prime is punching a snake in the head. When you see that, and then you watch Dune, it looks prettier. The sandworms, it's the same thing, right? It's big worms attacking people. Base level. I don't think I've ever pissed off people as much as I'm doing it right now. On the base level, it's the same thing. But Transformers 3, I constantly was wondering who's going to die in this movie. They were up against insurmountable odds. Megatron teamed up with Sentinel Prime to destroy the planet Earth and to bring Cybertron into Earth's orbit. You're like, oh my god, this is the end of humanity. Everything seemed to come so easy to the good guys in Dune 2. They're like, we're going to do this, and then they do it, and it's super successful. And then this guy goes, he's the prophet. And then the next scene, they're like, how are we going to do this? And Timothée Chalamet is like, oh, we're just going to do this. And then they do it, and this guy shows up and he goes, he's the prophet. That's pretty much 2/3 of the movie. At a certain point, the guy, Stigler, what's his name? Stigler or Steinman or something like that. So many times he goes, he's the prophet. It basically became like a joke. Like whenever Timothée Chalamet would do anything, they show him just kind of walking iconically through the fog. They would then cut to Javier Bardem, and you knew exactly what he was going to say. He's the prophet. It's like, okay, I get it. He's the prophet. So, I know you guys have all been wondering. I'm going to wake up. You guys are dressed as sandworms eating me. I'm like, no. And a guy will show up and go, he's not the prophet. As I'm gobbled up. Anyways, let's go ahead and get started with this episode. Dasha, drop us off in Russia. We're headed to a area outside of Moscow. It's September 3rd, 1977. 2 in the morning. So quite early. We're about to meet this young woman. We don't have a real name. We'll call her Maria. She's falling asleep. Getting a little sleepy. Eyes are shutting. She's not quite asleep, but she's falling asleep if you haven't caught on yet. She's falling asleep. All of a sudden, something startles her, and she looks out her bedroom window, and she sees a glowing Saturn-shaped object outside her bedroom window. So like a big ball with a ring around it. And obviously this is a UFO. Obviously she can tell there's something off about this. Generally, Saturn doesn't fly around the neighborhood. She looks outside her bedroom window, she sees this flying Saturn-shaped object, and then she sees several humans dressed in what appear to be Soviet military uniforms. They're dressed like Soviet soldiers. But they're glowing. I'm assuming the skin's glowing, but their uniforms aren't. They're glowing and they're flying off in different directions. Woo, 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 flying off. One of them starts flying right towards her. And it lands on her balcony. He lands on the balcony and he goes, do not worry, don't worry, I'm an alien. I just look like a Soviet soldier. But you definitely don't want a Soviet military dude showing up in your house in the middle of the night. He's like, don't be afraid of me. I'm disguised as a soldier, but I'm really an alien. And they start talking. Maria and this alien start talking for a while. Conversation lasts for around 2 hours. Just chatting about stuff. And the entire time they're talking, Maria notices something. He stops glowing so much. This alien is slowly morphing into a man. Like having the facial features of a human, the hands of a human, all that stuff. But not just any human. He begins to shapeshift slowly into a man, a dude that Maria actually has the hots for. It's a guy she recognizes, a guy that she likes. And when the transformation is complete, when this alien is standing on the balcony, looking just like this dude that she thinks is hot, the alien goes, hey, I was wondering, do you want to have sex? You want to do it? And Maria goes, no, I'm good. I don't want I don't want to have sex with a glowing, shape-shifting man. And then they talk for just a little bit longer, and the dude's like, okay, I gotta fly back to my UFO. Whee! He doesn't actually state that he said that, but he flies back to the UFO, and then the UFO, the Saturn-like object, vanishes. This story was reported, I found out about it on thinkaboutit.docs.com. It's a big UFO repository. They got it from Vladimir v. Rubtsov. He gave a speech at the MUFON, which is the Mutual UFO Network, symposium proceedings back in 1994. And this is an interesting story for a couple different reasons. One, it sounds incredibly goofy, and you go, well, Jason, she's probably just dreaming. It takes place in the middle of the night. She was quote-unquote falling asleep. She probably fell asleep. It was probably a dream. The pedigree of Vladimir Rubtsov. He's actually a very famous, well-recognized UFO researcher. He's been doing it for decades. I don't think he would include this in a speech to other UFO researchers unless he felt it was legit. Just to show his pedigree, he wrote a paper in 1966 called Guests from Outer Space or Atmospheric Phenomenon that was published in the scientific journal in the Soviet Union called Zania to Protsa. This was the first article ever published in the Soviet press that was a positive spin on the alien phenomenon, that wasn't completely dismissing it out of hand. And then in 1980, he wrote his doctoral thesis, Philosophical and Methodological Aspects of the Problem of Extraterrestrial Civilizations. That was also its very first kind, the very first dissertation like that done in the Soviet Union. And there was a long period of time where people didn't talk about UFOs because we've covered stories like this before. I'll see if I can find them for the show notes. People would experience a UFO. In the US, they had the Men in Black. In the Soviet Union, they had the KGB. The KGB was constantly showing up to these villages and to these homes saying, what did you see? What did you see? People were disappearing. People were being tortured if they said that they had a UFO encounter because the KGB wanted to know what they saw. Was it US? Were they a spy? Were they trying to dilute the purity of the Soviet, the communist hierarchy by saying there was a more intelligent species out there? It took a lot of guts to talk about it in the Soviet Union. So the fact that the story, it is kind of weird. And when I say weird, it's not necessarily the alien visitation. What I'm curious about is what they talked about for 2 hours. There's a notation that said one of the things they talked about is why aliens were coming here, but that's not expounded on in the text that I have. And this was a speech that he gave. I wasn't able to find it. I wasn't able to find any more details. The idea of an alien shapeshifting, assuming the form of a human, that's pretty much where all the reptilian stuff comes from. The shapeshifting reptilians taking over the planet. So that kind of goes along with alien lore. What I find really interesting about this story is the fact that the alien was able to shapeshift into somebody that she was physically attracted to. Which would mean and again this would fit UFO lore, some form of telepathy or simple mind reading. Now, we see a lot of human interbreeding stories as well with aliens. I imagine that's what was going on here. This alien was trying to have sex with her to possibly create some sort of half human, half alien baby. It's also possible, though, that this was just shore leave for the aliens. This was the equivalent of a U.S. Navy battleship pulling up to port in Trinidad and all the sailors getting off and having a good time for the weekend. Which in that case, I feel bad for this guy if it wasn't some sort of scientific expedition and he was just trying to get some, and he has to fly back to the Saturn-shaped object, and all these other alien bros are showing up and they're smoking cigars and stuff like that. They're like, dude, oh man, Earth women are the best. Oh man, it's so good. And this dude's just kind of sitting there, and he's like, yeah, oh no, I had so much sex tonight. I had the most sex ever. But she's in Canada. You'll never meet her. And they're like, oh, what? We were landed in Russia. Yeah, but she went to Canada after sex. Right afterwards. You'll never know. I feel kind of bad for the guy. Also, it does state, I know we do have a lot of, I made that joke about being in the friend zone in the beginning. I know, like, in the Sigma Alpha male community and stuff like that, there's that belief that, it's so hard to get a girl, which is not the easiest thing. I mean, as a guy, right? I empathize with some of the base level stuff that, it takes a lot of guts to walk up and talk to a girl, and you're going to get rejected way more often than you're going to get, a conversation, a phone number, bring the girl home, whatever. I get it. But there's also a term, I'm trying, getting priced out of the environment. So this idea that nowadays you're not just competing with the guys in your town, because we have things like Instagram, you're competing with guys all over the world. If there's a really, really hot girl in your college, it's not like her dating prospects are limited to the people at that college or the people in the surrounding town. She could have men from France or Saudi Arabia or Russia or whatever vying for her attention. So you're getting priced out of the dating pool. This idea that local guys don't stand a chance. If this story's true, neither do aliens. Like, a shape-shifting alien couldn't even get lucky this night. That's really bad news for guys. Maybe she just wasn't in the mood. Maybe if he'd shown up disguised as the guy, I mean, that's creepy. That'd be terrifying. Wouldn't that be so creepy? If one day you're just hanging out and this girl shows up and she's like, I had a wonderful time last night with you. Oh man, that was great. And you're like, huh? What? And she's like, yeah, remember last night when you flew to my balcony? I didn't know you could fly. You're like, huh? She's like, yeah, you flew to my balcony and you came in my bedroom window and then we had mind-blowing sex. That was amazing. What happened if an alien disguised himself as you and banged this girl, and then she comes to you and she's like, oh, that was so awesome. I hope I can see you again next weekend. And you're like, what? It would totally be creepy. Like, did I black out last night? How in the world does she think I had sex with her? I didn't have sex with her. I was up all night eating Totino's pizza rolls, watching Cobra Kai. And then you find out she's pregnant. She's like, oh, we're going to have a baby. We're going to have You see her glowing war on her tummy. You're like, I'm pretty sure that's not my baby. I think you had sex with a shape-shifting alien. She's like, no, it was you. It was you. We talked all night long about why you were visiting Earth. You're like, listen, gal, you're cute and all, you're a little insane, or you talk to an alien. I can't fly. I've always been on Earth. My children won't glow. No, I remember. It was you. That'd be creepy. It's probably a good thing this alien did not impersonate him from the get-go. But an interesting story nonetheless. Even aliens are getting priced out of the dating market. Dasha loses. Wait, let's go ahead and toss you the keys to the world-famous Carpenter Copter. We are leaving behind Russia. Fly us all the way out to a grocery store. We're headed all the way out to this grocery store. The year, I believe, based on some information in the narrative, is 2019. I'm not 100% on that, but it's around there. 2019, we're about to meet a young woman. Her name, we'll call her Sheila. She's at a grocery store and she's doing some shopping because there's been a couple big changes in her life. She had got divorced a couple of years back, and she met a young man, we'll call him Philip, a man from Iraq, a young Iraqi man, and she was very intrigued by him. And then over time just came to really care for him. It was, as far as she was concerned, the best relationship she had ever had. She had never been happier. Dating Philip, they dated for 4 years. But recently they had broke up because he cheated on her. Completely broke her heart. She's in the grocery store. She's buying stuff because she's actually in the final stages of moving out of her house. She's going to get a new place. And she's having to do all this alone. She's divorced. Her new boyfriend, that didn't work out. So she's in this grocery store late at night all by herself. And that's when she sees, walking down one of the aisles, a Middle Eastern man. Dressed head to toe in white. He had on a white turban and a white galabaya, which is the long flowing robe, dressed in all white. And again, like really caught her eye. Very exotic looking as far as Sheila is concerned. And she looks at him and he looks at her and they smile at each other and then they go their separate ways. Well, Sheila's in another aisle of this grocery store. She's still picking stuff up and she's only 4'11". But what she needs is on this top shelf and she's kind of like reaching up to try to grab this thing. She can't get it and she's kind of looking from side to side to see if there's an associate, an employee who can help her out. And then she turns and she sees that man, the Middle Eastern man in the long flowing white robe and the white turban, standing right behind her. Whoa, hey! Kind of startles her and he reaches up and he grabs the item she needs because he's quite taller than she is and hands it to her. They start chatting. And that's when she gets to know this guy. We're going to call him Joseph. Joseph says he's from Egypt and he's actually on a work visa right now. He's on a work visa because he is a prophet who is teaching the Quran to people here in America. He also tells her that he's married, his wife is back in Egypt, and he has a young daughter, and that really puts Sheila at ease, and they're kind of talking and chatting up in the grocery store aisle, and eventually he says, hey, because she goes, I'm moving stuff out, I'm coming here to get some supplies to clean some stuff out. He goes, well, I'll go back to your house with you. I'll help you out. And she said, I don't know what came over me. Like, even though he was married and had a kid, normally I don't invite strangers over to my house, but I just didn't even really consider any danger. I said, yeah, sure, why don't you come over and help me out? That'd be great. Her basement had been flooded, a bunch of stuff was left behind. She really did need help, and here was this nice man, nice religious man, lending a hand. So, yeah, sure, why not? They go back to her place. This is late at night still. They pack up a bunch of garbage that is just kind of left around, detritus from packing stuff up. Not a garbage heap. All the furniture's gone. House is pretty much empty. And she begins to show him around the house. And this is a house that she lived in with her husband for so many years. She's finally getting a new place. And she goes, when we got into the bedroom, and there was no furniture in the bedroom, but we walked into the bedroom, he leaned over and he kissed Sheila. And again, Sheila goes, I don't know what came over me. I knew he was married, and that's pretty much all I knew. And the next thing I know, we were having sex on the floor. We were having sex on the floor of this empty bedroom, and she described it as terribly exciting. So passionate, just to be swept up in the moment. They make plans to meet up again, and sure enough, at one point they meet at a hotel. I think at this point she's moved out of her house completely. They're at a hotel. And they begin having sex when all of a sudden Joseph stops in the middle of sex and goes, sorry, we'll finish that in a second. It's now my time to pray. And he takes out his prayer mat and he begins to pray to the east, pray towards Mecca. Now, I know I have a lot of Muslim listeners, and they're like, wait, what? What? We'll get into that. We'll get into that in a second. And they're like, oh, there's something wrong with this dude. We'll get into that in a second. And Sheila thought it was a little off too, but people have different customs, different religions do different things. And so he interrupted sex to roll out his prayer mat and pray towards Mecca. At that point, he also gave her a Quran that is Arabic to English. And he goes, I want you to study this. You should read it. You should study it, contemplate it. And there's very important truths in this book. She's like, yeah, sure. She goes, we saw each other about 2 more times. And then eventually he moved to New York City. But even then we were talking to each other long distance. And he had mentioned that he wanted to make me one of his wives. He said in Egypt, a man can have more than one wife, which is true. I actually looked that up. It's not super common. Less than 1% of marriages in Egypt are polygamous. But, it's possible. She said, though, we ended up just losing contact. We stopped talking to each other at a certain point. And that all happened in a very short time period. So now she's talking to her friends and she's like, oh my God, I had the most amazing experience. I met this awesome dude. I mean, he's gone now, but it was great. And she started telling him about it. And she told him the story. Yeah, when you're in the middle of having sex, and he said he needed to pray because, Muslims, they have to pray 5 times a day. He pulled out the prayer mat and began to pray. And her friends are like, what? He interrupted sex that doesn't sound right. And Sheila's like, I mean, maybe, I know they have to pray 5 times a day. I don't know the specifics of it. And friend after friend was like, that sounds really weird. Well, her ex-boyfriend, Philip, who is Muslim as well, from Iraq, they start talking again. They start chatting again. And she tells him the whole story. She goes, I met this guy in a grocery store. One night it was super weird, but I brought him home and we had sex. And the whole time Philip's like, dude, please tell me you're making this up. Please tell me you're making this up. She's telling Philip all about this. Then she tells Philip about when they were having sex, and in the middle of it, he stopped to pray. He rolled out the prayer mat, and he's like, 100% there is something wrong with this guy. I looked it up, and whether or not you ejaculate, you're supposed to have a ritual cleansing before you pray. She tells Philip the whole story, and Philip goes, listen, I'm going to be completely honest with you. There is a group of people that have made it their purpose to enter the lives of vulnerable Americans and infest them with black magic. And I think that's who this guy is. He says this interesting quote. He goes, quote, they are sent here to ruin your life. They are not here to teach the Quran. They are here to do black magic on the American people. You need to stay away from him. I'm wondering if they is a human organization or an organization of spirits, like true dark magic. Again, almost like that first story. I'm not saying that there was like a demon impersonating Joseph, but you know what I mean? If this group exists, is it made up of humans who are trying to corrupt the Quran and its teachings to use the dark arts against Americans, or is it more supernatural than that? Are they in league with infernal forces? Well, she blows him off. Sheila doesn't really pay attention to that. As far as she's concerned, anyways, Joseph is gone. And really, Philip might just be a little jealous. She really kind of just blows him off. She ends up moving into a new place, and that's when she realizes that when she's at home alone, she feels like someone is watching her. She never truly feels home alone. Philip still is in touch with Sheila, and they start hanging out from time to time, and then they start hanging out a little more, and they start having a friends with benefits relationship. Not strictly dating, but, still enjoying each other's company, still having sex. One night, Sheila and Philip are having sex, and all of a sudden, Philip freaks out and almost jumps off the bed. It's just this knee-jerk reaction and totally takes Sheila off guard. Philip, what's the matter, dude? What's going on? And he said that even though the room was dark, he could see her eyes glowing. One night, Philip and Sheila are out driving around and they get to their destination, and Philip opens the car door and the interior light comes on and he jumps back. He completely freaks out again. Sheila's looking at Philip and Philip just has this expression of fear on his face, and he says, Sheila, your eyes are pitch black. Underneath the glow of that interior light on the ceiling of the car, you can see that Sheila's eyes are pitch black. Sheila doesn't have a reaction to this. She's not like, oh my God, why are you jumping around? Why are you so scared? Because from Sheila's point of view, she also realizes something is wrong. Sheila said, I can see right through you, Philip. I can see right through you. And she said it felt like she was a passenger in her own body. In that moment, she was looking through her own eyes, but something else was in there as well. Let's jump ahead to February 2024, which is when Sheila posted this story online underneath the name Sheila6 Scorpio. She said, all of that stuff happened early on, and for the most part, I just kind of brushed it all aside. But recently, I was talking to Philip, and he goes, Sheila, you've had a really rough 5 years, haven't you? Like, it's been really bad. And Sheila goes, yeah, the past 5 years have been pretty rough. And it shows in her posting history. Because the other thing she was talking kind of alongside this post, she was having issues because she was on probation for driving while intoxicated. So, I mean, that's pretty close to rock bottom. When you're endangering other people's lives, operating a motor vehicle while you're intoxicated. But it's not just that. She was actually posting about how she missed a court date and she doesn't have any money and she's trying to scramble for funds and she borrows money from a friend and the courthouse doesn't open till this date, and she's posting all this stuff about, am I going to get arrested? I'm going to be facing some prison time because part of my probation. And what it looked like was this was actually her 4th violation. And that hustle, we've all been there at some point in our lives, most of us not that seriously, but trying to scrounge up money before the electricity gets shut off for the 10th time, or trying to get the smog test on your car and it's already failed 3 times and you have to borrow money from your grandma. We've all been through those moments. A lot of them are from our own making, right? We blow stuff off. We don't do proper maintenance. Sometimes they seem like they just come out of the blue, but that's the type of chaos that Sheila's life is going through right now. She's posting about that. She's also posting in the psychosis subreddit. So she's having some mental health issues as well. And Philip goes, I think the reason why the last 5 years of your life have been so toxic is because of that man. I think he infested you with some sort of dark spirit. I know you don't want to hear it. I know you may not believe it. But it makes sense. I honestly think that he's the one who did this to you, that you would be in a totally different place in your life if it was not for that man. He goes, he was in the grocery store that night looking for a vulnerable person, a young woman shopping by herself late at night, and he found you, and you invited him into your house, and you invited that influence in, and you just, sorry, Sheila. I just think that that's the root cause of all this. And Sheila said, while he was telling me this stuff, my whole body was shaking. My whole body is shaking as we're talking about it. And he said, he goes, I think that the ghost is the term he used. So again, I don't know if this is a human organization, a human in league with demons, a demonic organization through and through. I don't know. But Philip used the term the ghost. He goes, I think the reason why you're actually having a physical reaction to this conversation right now is because, quote, the ghost, unquote, is mad we are talking about him. We're discussing what he's done, and this type of evil works better when it's hidden. Because then you don't know where the chaos is coming from. You just figure this is part of life. If you know what the source of it is, you can go to a holy man and have it cleansed. If you just think it's random chaos, you would never think to talk to a man of the cloth. Sheila goes on to say that she never feels alone, but not in the sense that even when she's at home alone, she feels like there's a presence in the house. She says, quote, "I still feel like I'm never alone within myself, as if there is a presence inside of her own body." Now, listen, you could chalk it up. You're like, Jason, she's posting on the psychosis subreddit. She could have some mental health struggles that could account for some of this. Totally. It wouldn't account for the outsider's view. It wouldn't account for Philip seeing the eyes change. It wouldn't account for the odd behavior of the man from Egypt as well, stopping sex in the middle of it to pray. You could say that, it could be, if she has full-blown psychosis, she could be imagining all of these other interactions with people as well. That's possible. I mean, psychosis can be that bad. But what's super interesting, and I hope, Sheila, I hope you get the help that you need, both medical to deal with a psychosis, because that's a medical condition, or therapy, and spiritually, because I do think that's part of the answer as well. If this thing has infested you, then you need help spiritually. If it is a mental health issue, you need, therapy, medication, things like that. It could be both. I would say it never hurts to do both. It never hurts to do both. I would never strictly say it's 100% a demon, you need zero medicine, or you need zero therapy. What's interesting, though, this story, a man in these white flowing robes shows up when a person's their most vulnerable at the grocery store. Bizarre sexual encounters sent here to destroy Americans, and don't talk about it. Don't talk about it. Even just mentioning the ghost, even talking about this story was causing this physical reaction, was making it mad that you had exposed it. I had prepped this story Friday night, the week before I'm recording this. I was prepping my stuff on Friday night, and I was going to go see Dune 2 pretty soon. So I better watch Dune Part 1. I'd never seen it. I knew nothing about it. I put it in. Amazing. It's an amazing movie. I knew none of the lore. Everything was brand new to me. It was the equivalent of watching Star Wars for the first time. I had no idea what was going to happen. I had no idea who was going to live or die, where the story was going, where the story would end. I love it. I really loved that first movie. It was absolutely fantastic. And you have these different characters in it. Obviously, it's sci-fi. I didn't expect so many fantasy elements. There is this group of, I guess you could call them witches, force users, if you wanted to go Star Wars about it, called the Bene Gesserit. It is a group of religious leaders. It seems to be primarily women. There's one dude, Paul Atreides, who has these abilities as well. But the Bene Gesserit is basically space nuns. They're a super power-hungry group of religious leaders who dress in very unassuming religious garb, mostly just robes and face pieces, so they do look like a walking confessional booth. You can barely see their face most of the time. But they don't look as dangerous as they actually are. Space magic wielding nuns. Not a huge part of the movie, right? Paul Atreides' mother is a Bene Gesserit, and she's in a lot of it, but it's not. They're a main plot mover, but they're not a main part of the movie. When you have Jason Momoa jumping over bad guys and stabbing them in the throat, and these huge explosions, and these sandworms, and this life and death battle on the planet Arrakis, I'd say the Bene Gesserit, they're memorable because it's such a unique type of character. But if you asked anyone to say, describe something from Dune, most people would go dirt or Sting from the David Lynch one, or sandworms. I prepped this story to go on Friday night. Did some other work. Did some other story stuff. Popped in Dune. It's like 2.5 hour long movie. Watched it. Super engaged. Loved it. Didn't play Minecraft while I was watching it. I actually watched it. I ended up going to bed probably about 3 in the morning. I go to bed. Fall asleep pretty quickly, 3 in the morning. And I have a dream. I don't remember most of it. But I remember the end of it. I was on a place, it was in a building that was not a building on Earth. It looked much like a building from Dune. It had kind of these angular, sloping walls. And a woman walks in with a handmaiden. And this woman, she was a mature woman. She was older than me. She's probably in her early 50s. Very voluptuous, thick, as the kids would say these days, woman. She walks in with her handmaiden, and I'm standing in this room, and as she's walking to where she's going to sit down, she's wearing this long, flowing white robe with this kind of headpiece on, like held the hair back, almost like a tiara, but I could see her face. And she walks in and she sits down, and when she sits down, the robe, I can tell now, is slit on the side, so I could see her thighs. It was very evocative when she sat down. When she was walking by, she just looked like she was wearing a long, flowing, very modest robe, but when she sat down, I could see her creamy white skin. And she started talking to me about something. I don't remember what it was. I just remember being incredibly attracted to this woman. It was everything about her. It wasn't just the shape of her body, which was very attractive. It was her entire presence. The way she spoke, the way she acted, the power that I knew she wielded, but didn't show it. It was inside of her. I was sexually attracted to her. I was emotionally attracted to her. And I woke up. And I lay in bed for a moment, and I felt almost cheated that I had this dream about such a beautiful woman. And I didn't get to spend more time with her. This beautiful, intriguing woman. I remember waking up and I thought, I want to spend more time with her. Like, that was the first thought in my head. The first thought in my head when I woke up. I wanted to spend more time with her. And I still felt like I could still feel the attraction in me. I could still feel the wanting and the longing for this woman. And my brain immediately starts putting pieces together. I go, oh, it's because I watched Dune before I went to bed. And that was a Bene Gesserit. That was supposed to be one of these space magic nuns. And I'm sitting up in bed. And I told this part of the story earlier during the week. I sit up on my bed and my eyes are like dreary red. Like, I ended up looking in the mirror later and I was like, dude, I was like completely exhausted. I sat up in my bed and that's when I saw, hovering in midair underneath my desk for a split second. We talked about this earlier on in the week, but I'll tell you again, if you didn't hear that episode. For a split second, I see lettering hovering above the floor underneath my work desk. And it said, "Are you ready?" ? And then underneath it was like a start button for like a video game. And I saw it like in the blink of an eye. Like, it was so quick. And it disappeared. And then I'm staring and I'm trying to think, I have double vision. My eyes are really, really dry when it gets this cold. I'm kind of like squinting. And I'm trying to figure out, I know immediately that it's not real. I don't believe that it was actually there, that there was some sort of spirit or some sort of portal or anything like that. I know immediately it was a trick of the eyes. Same thing when you look up at a cloud. You think you see a tiger. Or when you see movement out of your corner of your eye and you think it's a hand and you look over and you can kind of make a sense out of a berry bush to your right that, yeah, if you squinted and it moved quickly, maybe it looks like a finger, the shadow of a finger. Like, I knew it was a visual trick, but I kind of sat there and I tried to recreate it. I kind of focused my eyes in and out because there's a tangle of cords underneath my desk. And then I thought, well, I probably was still asleep. I probably just sat up so quickly. I was having what was known as a hypnagogic hallucination. And that's when I got up out of bed. I went to the bathroom. I looked in the mirror. My eyes were bloodshot. I was really tired still. Really tired. I could have slept a lot longer. But my body naturally woke up. And all this is happening in the scope of maybe 3 or 4 minutes. I wake up, I look, I see the text. I get up out of bed, I go look in the mirror. I was like, dude, my eyes are so red. I'm surprised I woke up. I walk out in the living room and I go, the Egyptian. Once I left my bedroom, what popped into my head was the story I just told you. I go, that was the woman. That was the woman in the white robes. She was there to sexually entice me. And almost like a circuit breaker, I think my brain forced me to wake up. And it's funny because 2 nights later I was sleeping and I had a dream. I was walking home from work and I heard a noise and I turned and there was a huge dog running towards me, barreling towards me. And I turned and I looked and it stopped and then I woke up immediately. And I remember in the dream, when I turned and I looked and I saw that dog, I said, this dream is over. I didn't say it out loud, but my brain was like, nope, and it forced me to wake up. Because I do not like dogs. I love pet dogs, and I love looking at puppies, and if you have a dog, that's totally awesome. But I'll put my dog episode in the show notes. I very, very, very rarely dream of dogs, and even far more rare than that, dream about dogs trying to attack me. And my brain, like a circuit breaker, said, nope, we're not going to let you have a dream where you're fighting a dog or getting injured by a dog. The dream just woke me up. The dream ended. My brain just shut it off. And so I wonder if that's what happened that night, too. If I was becoming more and more sexually enticed by this woman. And it forced me to wake up. And I felt cheated. I felt robbed. Now, is that connected to the thing underneath the desk, the Are You Ready? Again, I don't really think that was paranormal. I think that was a trick. Because remember, I see everything, I have double vision. Everything's 1.5 to me. If I thought everything I saw was paranormal, then everyone on the planet's 300 pounds. Because everyone on the planet looks to be about 3 to 4 feet wide to me. I have to really focus to make people look the normal width that they are. I honestly, in my heart and in my mind, I don't think the two things are connected. I think the Are You Ready and the button underneath my desk may have still been my brain. It woke me up out of that dream. And I think I wasn't ready to be awake, and the dreaming process was still going on. But super interesting. This 100% could be coincidences. I did watch a movie with a bunch of women wearing those robes. I will say this, I consume a ton of media. Very, very rarely. I've never had a dream where I've been in Tron world, which I love Tron. I've played every video game, watched all the movies, watched the animated series. Yeah, Tron 3's coming out. I'm already hyped for that. I've had maybe a handful, maybe 5 Star Wars dreams, tops, since my childhood, and it's probably 3. I've maybe had 2 Transformer dreams my entire life. Could be a coincidence, could have been dreaming about Dune. I could have been spending a lot of mental power typing out these notes, reading and rereading her story, and quote unquote, the ghost was mad that I was going to expose it on this podcast. It's heard around the world. and it was trying to entice me, get into my life. Who knows, right? This is one of those stories where you kind of just gotta shrug your shoulders. We have Sheila's story. We see the damage that it has done to her. Whether or not this has tried to enter my life, it may have tried. It totally could have been a coincidence that I had a dream like that after, because I did a bunch of stories that day. I typed up a bunch of stories. I did 9 other stories that I prepped for this week. This was the only one I dreamt about. Or was it? Was it a dream? Was it connected? The only real connection was the sexual tension and the long flowing white robes. But even her, she didn't have on the tall Bene Gesserit hood that the ladies wore in the movie, but she did have like a object on her head, like a hairpiece or a tiara or something like that. I wasn't spending a lot of time looking at her head, but was that also part of this man? He was wearing the turban and the long white robes. Was this a representation of that? Who knows? But that's why I wanted to put a cursed warning on this, because it could 100% be a coincidence. So I wanted to call it out if it wasn't. And if by hearing about this, it may be headed towards you. And it's also interesting because we have to think, what if Sheila's story is 100% true and there is a group of people who are coming over to America and slowly infesting our lives using dark magic, perverting the Quran, using it as a cover to find vulnerable people and ruin their lives. If so, this organization needs to be exposed. I would argue, very dangerous, right? If there's a group of people out there doing that and they hear this episode, they might come after me. If I disappear anytime soon, it was a mysterious organization from the Middle East. That's not a lot to go on, right? I don't think you can get much justice for me, but interesting story. You go, Jason, haven't you been sick this whole week? Haven't you been sick all week and your episodes are getting all screwy and everything like that? Did all of that happen after this dream? Did all of this physical sickness and your tongue hurting, even though you do a podcast and everything you've been complaining about, did that happen after your dream? Yeah, pretty much. I have had that in the back of my head. I go, I've been pretty sick this week. But I don't, again, I think that's a coincidence. I think the lettering floating in the air was just a still asleep, still dreaming visual trick. But I could just be telling myself that. Because admitting that it may all be connected is actually quite terrifying. I think the dream might have really been part of the story. That I think, but seeing the lettering and being sick this week, I don't think is part of it. I just feel that in my gut. And I know at the end of the day, I'm protected from all these dark spiritual forces. I know that I'm invulnerable to this type of dark magic, these type of demonic influences, and you may be as well. I just wanted to put the cursed episode warning on there just in case. Just because these forces can't get into our lives doesn't mean they won't try. And so we should always be careful. Doesn't mean we don't discuss them. We just have to use some caution when we do. DeadRabbitRadio@gmail.com is going to be our email address. You can also hit us up at Facebook.com/DeadRabbitRadio. TikTok is @DeadRabbitRadio. Dead Rabbit Radio is the daily paranormal conspiracy and true crime podcast. You don't have to listen to it every day, but I'm glad you listened to it today. Have a great one.